anything, brothers and sisters?
不要担心，我讲得很短。
Don't worry, my exhortation should be very short.
两个节目是请我讲几句勉励的话。
Reverend Tony Liao asked me to say a few words of exhortation.
就是要向前看。
In other words, we have to look forward and look ahead.
很开心听见说，大学生教会的弟兄姐妹有超过70%都是同工。
Well, I was very pleased to hear that over 70% of the church membership here are serving, are co-workers.
所以我就向这一大批同工讲几句勉励的话。
So I'm going to direct my exhortation towards this large group of 70% of you who serves.
要跟你们分享3节经文。
I want to share with you 3 passages from the scripture. 3 verses.
罗马书12章1到3节。
The first, all 3 verses are from Romans chapter 12, verse 1 to 3.
所以弟兄们，我以神的慈悲劝你们，将身体献上，当作活祭，是圣洁的，是神所喜悦的。你们如此侍奉，乃是理所当然的。不要效法这个世界，只要心意更新而变化，叫你们查验何为神的善良、纯全、可喜悦的旨意。我凭着所赐我的恩，对你们个人说，不要看自己过于所当看的，要照着神所分给个人信心的大小，看得合乎中道。
Romans chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you.
第一节说要将身体献上。
The first verse tells us to offer our bodies as living sacrifices.
保罗说他是凭着神的慈悲劝大家。
Paul said that he urged us to offer our bodies in view of God's mercy.
因为神的慈悲，所以我们要把我们全人献上给神。
In other words, because for the very reason of God's mercy, therefore we should offer our entire body, our entire self as living sacrifices.
因为神的慈悲，我们就应该有一个报恩的心。
Because of God's mercy, we should have a way to respond to God's mercy.
因为神的慈悲，我们就应该爱耶稣。
Because of God's mercy, we should love Jesus.
我们可以有各种各样不同的热心。
We can have shown our enthusiasm in various ways.
很多人热心侍奉，但是不一定是为了爱耶稣。
Many people indeed serve fervently, but they may not be serving out of the motive of love of Jesus.
所以需要反省，提醒自己，是因为报恩的心，所以把身体献上给耶稣。
Therefore, a person who's serving should reflect and really ponder, are they serving this way? They should be serving as a response, as a reply to God's mercy.
第二节说呢，不要效法这个世界，要心意更新而变化。
Second verse says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed.
我们要调整我们的价值观。
We need to alter and rethink our value system.
跟这个世界不一样。
And it should be a value system different from that of this world.
调整价值观跟明白神的旨意是息息相关的。
That when we learn to readjust, at least adjust our value system, that's very closely tied to understand God's will.
如果我们没有把身体献上给主，没有调整我们的价值观，我们不能够明白神的旨意。
If we have not offered our bodies as living sacrifices, if we have not transformed our value system by the renewing of mind, we will not understand God's will.
什么叫不要效法这个世界呢？
Well, what does it mean by Paul saying not to conform any longer to this world?
就是不要追求从人来的荣耀，不要追求从这个世界来的荣耀。
Well, what it meant by not to conform is not to pursue the glory that came from this world, not to pursue any glory that came from men's praise.
要追求从神来的荣耀。
In other words, we should pursue the glory that came from God.
人怎么看你没有关系，
Well, it really doesn't matter how men view you.
最重要的是上帝怎么看你。
The most important thing is how God views you.
主耶稣在约翰福音第5章，
In chapter 5 of the Gospel of John, Jesus said this following.
耶稣责备那些文士法利赛人，
Jesus reprimanded the Pharisees and the scribes.